Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is mid-November. Mike Shea. I want to do a follow-up video on one I did the other day, updating on the state of the market. And part of this is specifically oriented to business sellers as they're kind of choosing brokers should they come to market. So, as I mentioned in the other video, which will pop up here in a tab, you can go back and reference it. Third quarter of this year was just a massive blowout that was all driven by the SBA incentive to get deals done. So we saw this spike of volume. We were down year over year, but we have this spike of volume that happened in the third quarter. And then we've got this dramatic drop off. So I'm seeing emails from people going, hey, post the election, it's gotten quiet. And then we've got, call volume activity dropping, a cursory scan of the internet for new listings of other brokers shows that volumes are down in terms of sales. And then we looked at inventory in our local MLS system here in Florida, and we noticed that the market is, in terms of businesses for sale, 50% lower than a year ago. So literally there's half the inventory that there was available a year ago. Why is that? A variety of different reasons, but the bottom line is half the stuff is a lot. I mean, it's a significantly low number. So what does that mean to sellers? Supply and demand's a real factor in the business sale market. It's fluid. Supply and demand drives multiples. At the private equity level, we know that there are crazy multiples being sold on large entities, 10, 11, 12 multipliers on deals on EBITDA. Simply because there's competition for a deal. That also happens at the small business level to some degree. We see people willing to overpay to get deals. And then when there's extra qualifiers like, will the business qualify for a visa? Does it have steady cash flow? Those are variables. So what's driving the inventory drop? Well, a large portion of it is the disappearing of the restaurants. There just aren't any. They're gone. COVID has destroyed them, and now you don't have any restaurants that are for sale. There will be deals to buy restaurants in terms of assets for new concepts, but a lot of businesses have just gone out of business. Now, why is this important? So it's important to sellers to understand the inventory dynamic and the valuation dynamic, and just how unique and choppy the marketplace is at a given time and place. When you're choosing brokers, you need to factor that. You need to factor that because if the inventory and the volume is down, and that's how brokers make money, and that's how they cash flow their operations in terms of ad spend, which is their largest expense, how are you going to choose a broker to market and sell your business in a difficult market? Back in the old days when I worked in corporate America and I would bid at a national level with companies, the purchasing departments of those companies would oftentimes ask for our balance sheets and our financial statements. And this is less, servicing people like Wachovia or Bank of America. And the simple reason was we were a critical component of the supply chain to those companies. And they wanted to make sure that we had given them or had the ability to sustain ourselves financially as we bid. Because when we get into bidding cycles with companies or go through the purchasing process, we would simply, submit our bids, and we would sometimes lose to people who were, competing on price. The purchasing agents and the companies would want to make sure that they were making prudent decisions, because if a company is bidding solely on price, they probably aren't going to be able to sustain operations. So as buyers, they were judging our ability to function based upon the pricing we were giving. You should do the same. When you're choosing a broker, you need to make sure they have the financial capability to do what they say they're going to do. Now, that's hard to do when you don't understand their business. So when you interview brokers, you absolutely positively need to understand how their business operates and how they make money and how much it costs to fund advertising. So, in our case, we have a variety of different tools we have. We're a national company. We are the largest business brokerage. So we negotiate lower prices than, say, a boutique broker who's on Biz Buy Sell. If we have 4,000 listings across our system, we can go to Biz Buy Sell and say, hey, we're paying X. Billy Bob business broker next door who's got 10 listings is going to pay Y. And because he's paying Y, it's a much higher number. He or she does not have the liquidity to go out and market in other avenues. They don't have the ability to go out and do digital media marketing. They don't have the ability to keep their SEO marketing up to date. They don't have the ability to invest in their software systems to do buyer matching. All things that drive how wide the net is to catch the right buyer for the right seller. So what are the things that make us different? So like I said earlier, we are the largest business brokerage in the world. So our financial resources run deep. If Orlando takes a hit because our tourism market's down and Mike Shea's business sales are off 30% than they were the prior year, we as an organization have the ability to deploy liquidity from our other sales in our other markets, say Denver, Virginia, UK, Australia, to thrive and survive and adjust and grow. Second, having been in business for 40 years, our database is massive. So we just historically collect data. How much does it cost somebody to collect data, whether it be contact, phone numbers, emails? It takes money to store that data and to use that data offensively to reach out to people in email campaigns, postcard campaigns, direct mail. That's just not, something that is without a cost. It's a minimal cost, but on a macro level, when you have no intake as a small boutique broker, you don't have the money to deploy, and you have to make judgment calls on, hey, I get most of my sales from Biz by Sell. I'm going to pull back on my direct mail, or I'm going to pull back on my merger network, or I'm going to pull back on my deal stream, or I'm going to pull back on my businessbroker.net, paring themselves down to just one or two websites for listing as opposed to others. The other thing we do that drives our cash flow and ability to service is our co-brokering philosophy. Never talked about, never asked as a seller, because you just assume that everybody co-brokers. But if I'm a boutique broker and my volume's off 50% from the year prior and I'm hurting for cash flow, am I going to proactively act in the right way to get the best deal for the seller? Or am I going to not work well and play well with others to get the commission for both sides to myself so that I can continue to just survive as a brokerage? That's a dynamic that really happens. Ask your broker how many deals they did, because that's going to be an indicator on how much money they have to fund their operation. Look at the technology that exists and ask your broker, how are they moving forward in terms of dominating? When the growth of voice search is more and more every day, when you ask your Alexa device or your Google Home device who a business broker is, if your broker's not popping up in the search engines, there's a problem, and you need to understand that stuff. Why? Because people are making choices that way. And how is the dynamic of marketing being deployed against voice technology? Video, podcasts, YouTube channels, Vimeo channels, all those things contribute to voice as a search and need to be available for buyers and sellers alike from a marketing standpoint. Does your broker not only have the economic bandwidth to do all these things, but does your broker have the time bandwidth to do all these things? Solo practitioners are good because they provide a lot of attention. But again, if all their attention is on one, they get tugged, and that bandwidth limits their ability to scale and flip and pivot to market dynamics. If I'm a boutique business broker, like we sell restaurants, and the restaurant brokerage market has just collapsed, is that broker available now to pivot into a different market segment when he has no cash flow from restaurant sales? It's a real problem, and we're going to see some brokerages fall out. So these are topics I think you need to consider. And this applies to any vendor you secure. You have to make sure they have the wherewithal and the resources to go the distance. If they do not have a strong balance sheet, they are not going to be able to properly market your business. And when push comes to shove, they may not make the right decision for you as opposed to themselves. So that's my thought of the day. Have a good one.